We're Ensue Media.
Night, Mr. Walters.
You see that guy over there? Now, he's an actor. The guy on the phone, he's a prize fighter. Me, I'm a cab driver. I'm the only cab driver in this place.
Good evening and welcome to Night, Mr. Walters, a taxi podcast. I'm HP, your co-host, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Father Malone. Father Malone, how are you this evening?
Muppets.
We're talking Taxi Season 2, Episode 9, The Great Race. This was written by Glenn Gordon Caron, who you might be, that name might be familiar to you. He would go on to be the creator of the hit, exactly, the hit show Moonlighting, which was the star maker for Bruce Willis.
You know what? I somehow missed his name in the credits here. But now that you've said it, it makes total sense. The frenetic energy and fun of this episode completely is what's on display in Moonlighting.
This one's a treat. It was, of course, directed by James Burrows. I neglected to say that. Reminder, we're doing these shows in broadcast order and not in order of filming. We open in the garage as Louie hustles his way down those central stairs. He's complaining that the boss has chewed him out because of the cabbie's lousy bookings. Louie goes on to say that back when he was a driver, he'd be ashamed to show his face if he had bookings less than $100. He claims that he could get in a cab right now and outbook anybody, which Wheeler starts to take umbrage at.
I love this premise because every boss you'll have in your life, if it hasn't said this or she hasn't said this, they're thinking it.
Yeah. Wheeler kind of gets his hackles up. He responds with skepticism, and Louie replies, "Try me, call my bluff." And then Wheeler starts to talk tough about accepting the challenge, but instead he volunteers Alex to be Louie's opponent. Bobby's point is that Alex can outbook Louie anytime, anywhere. And this was a great bit of physical comedy. He starts jabbing his finger in Louie's face. And what is an animal like Louie going to do if you do this too many times? What does he do?
He bites him, but he does warn him, like, get your finger out of my face.
Yeah, he bites him on the finger. And it's
you know what? It's bad, though, because he doesn't really bite it. The comedy here, the physical comedy, he doesn't really bite it. He sort of like looks like he's like chewing on his fingernail. It looks like he's come in to give him a manicure with his teeth.
He does gum his finger a little bit, but I really appreciated the commitment to the bit that he would actually put Wheeler's finger in his mouth.
HP,
yeah,
is this where David Mamet got the idea for Glenn Ross?
You think so? It could be. I don't know. He was pretty active around this time, right?
And then eventually writes that opening scene for the Alec Baldwin. Like, I could take these leads right now, and I could have,
That I didn't think of that. That's a very good point. Alex essentially tells everybody to calm down, and he's forced to admit that he knew Louie as a driver, and he can attest to the fact that Louie did bring in a lot of money, which is interesting because I think in the first season, we were led to believe that Alex has been driving a cab for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
So that's within the realm of possibility that Louie might
Probably
have been
the last 1 or 2 years of Louie as a cabbie before he moved up. Sure.
Yeah. So he's aware of Louie's reputation. He would have seen it firsthand.
Which I love. I love this backstory. And I love that it's enough to make Reiger reconsider this bet. Like, I will probably lose. We always see Reiger unsure of himself before he commits something like this, because we've already seen this episode in the form of a poker game, but this one is just much more successful.
Yeah, he's got to be pushed. He's got to be goaded into accepting this challenge. But Bobby tells Alex he can't back down, but Alex is really apprehensive. And then Louie starts in with this business about calling Alex a chicken. Side note, when exactly was getting called a chicken the height of all insults? And at what point did it stop being a big deal? Like, if someone called you a chicken right now, Father Malone, would you care?
No, not even remotely. I know it definitely was in no way in fashion when it became such a horrible Achilles heel for Marty McFly. I remember thinking at the time that movie came out, like, is this what these, like, this is what these screenwriters think, calling somebody chicken. That'll do it these days. Is it 1958? To answer your question, 1958 is the last time calling somebody chicken meant anything. It's just that the goddamn boomers kept squawking, haha, about calling people chicken and like it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I was thinking specifically that probably the highest profile example of this was, as you said, Back to the Future 2, where Flea calls Marty McFly a chicken, and that basically forces him to drive the car into traffic. He has the accident that injures his hand. He can never, whatever. But I always thought, even then, that was a very thin sort of premise to hang that type of situation on. Like, is that really going to cause someone to get that upset that they're going to like risk life and limb? And in this case, maybe that's the worst part of this episode, which is not saying much because it's a fabulous episode, but probably the thing I liked the least was he could have done something. They could have been more creative in goading Alex into accepting this challenge. But that's a, like I said, that's a nitpick. It's not a big deal.
You know what? Maybe for those guys are of a similar vintage. So maybe chicken, you know, back in 58, they were both kids. Like chicken means something to them. It's like saying this guy is a fucking prick or something. I don't know.
I don't know, but Alex says he doesn't like to get involved in things like this. He gets a little crazy. And I think we've seen flashes of this. We eventually learned that he's had a gambling problem. I think we saw that when he played cards with Louie's brother, that he tries to level with Louie and that it's taken him a long time to get over competitiveness in his life. And he'd rather they just drop the whole thing.
HP, like how far into the episode are we now? Maybe 5 minutes?
Not even. I think it's very, very early.
Right. And we've already learned this like thing about Louie in the past. It's true. We know much more about him. We know a lot more about Reiger and his unwillingness to go up against Louie. Like he thinks he'll be beaten. And now we learn this other thing about Reiger. And it's being bang, boom. Like we just watched an episode of a love triangle with Banta and Wheeler and some lady. And I didn't learn one thing about any of those fuckers over a 20-something minute episode.
The writing here is really, really good. I can't recall offhand if this was his only episode, but if it is, it's a shame because it is, like you said, it's economical where it's going at a rapid pace. We're only like 4 or 5 minutes into the episode and we're already cooking. There's already a lot going on here, a lot of pieces moving.
And a lot of character. It's insane how much is put together just in this moment or two.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And we will see this as the episode goes along, but really everybody has a little piece of this episode. This is one of those great Taxi episodes where the whole gang is involved to a certain degree. And it's wonderful, especially as a palate cleanser I keep talking about the previous episode, but it cannot be overstated how dreary it was. Louie, he hears this from Alex, and Louie starts hopping around the garage, making chicken clucking noises. And now Alex is really getting mad. We've seen what Alex can do. He's like Bill Bixby in the Hulk, right? You don't want to make Alex angry because you won't like him when he's angry.
Ironically, we really do like him when he's angry, but it's probably not best to be around him when he's angry.
No. So he does the classic thing where he says to Louie, "You cluck one more time and he'll take you up on this silly bet and he'll beat you." And naturally,
making a meal of this.
He makes a meal of this. He grabs the mic from his
might as well have put on a tuxedo.
He takes the microphone from his cage and he makes the loudest clucking noises. They're echoing throughout the whole garage. And finally, this puts Alex over the edge and he agrees to the contest. And all of the cabbies, and it must be said, the viewer, we're delighted with what's going to happen because it looks like fun, right? Everybody loves a caper. Everybody loves one of these self-contained bottle episodes where it's just about some silly bet or some silly wager, and I'm in for it. I love this kind of episode.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and we're obviously in the right hands for it.
Bobby hypes up the garage with this announcement that this is the King Cabbie contest and it'll take place tomorrow. But then Alex says, "Why should we wait till tomorrow? Let's do it now." And everybody is
love the fire.
He's really He's very, very hyped up for this. And Louie agrees. And now Tony starts off the betting interest. He says, I'm going to put $100 on Alex. Louie covers the bet. And then he says that he's going to cover all the bets. So now there's all this betting action going on, people betting on this, that, the other thing. And then Louie decks himself out in his cab uniform, which is awesome. It's this leather coat and a scarf and one of those page boy caps, you
The
know?
leather page boy caps with a button on it. Oh my God. I'm like, this episode is great. And then it gets better. And now this, it's a delight. This episode's a treat.
It's so much fun because we're geared up for this contest. What's going to happen? We don't know. Oh, side note, throughout the scene and the rest of the episode, by the way, you can hear the distinctive honking laughter of Jim Brooks, one of the producers. It's always, for me, that's always a mark of a really excellent episode because you can hear his laughter above the audience consistently. It's wonderful. It makes you feel like this, like if they're charged up for it, then I'm going to be charged up for it, you know?
Absolutely.
Because you got to figure Jim Brooks has been watching rehearsals for this show throughout the week, and he still thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah, and wonderful that it's such an involuntary response comedy. I mean, laughter to comedy. That's how you know it's funny or not. Did you laugh?
Yeah. Alex announces that he's ready, and Bobby then makes an announcement that the winner is going to be the cabbie who brings in the most money in 8 hours. It's very important. I'll come back to that later in the episode. Alex asks what the rules are, and then Louie says, the rules are there are no rules, and they shake on it. Nardo goes over to Alex and wishes him luck and says, well, if she had any extra money, she'd bet on Alex for sure. And this catches Louie's ear, and he says he'll cover that bet. She says, well, no, you don't understand. I don't have any money. And looking for an angle by which that she can bet something, Louie asks Nardo what's a date with her worth. She thinks for a moment and she says $500. Now, according to my favorite website, amortization.org, how much is $500 from 1979 in 2024, Father Malone?
1850.
No, it is $2,265.48.
I'm always $400 off. What's going on here?
I don't know, but think about that. She thinks for a minute, and she believes in today's parlance, a date with her is worth almost $2,300, and which, of course, Louie is incredulous at. But then Nardo thinks she got the best of him, and she smugly walks away. But then, to her surprise, Louie takes the bet. That stops her dead in her tracks.
Anyone would take that bet. That's the dumbest thing ever.
So then Louie and Alex get in their cabs, and Latka starts the race, Grease style, in front of the cabs with a handkerchief or whatever. Latka starts the race. And,
2 potato, 3 potato.
yeah, 1 for the money, 2 for the show.
And then we got this crazy shot of 2 cabs racing out of the garage, man.
It's awesome because we rarely ever see the cabs actually moving in and out of the garage. So it really gives you a sense of scale for the garage. I think they did a great job with that. So now they race out of the garage. I think actually Louie has the inside track. He cuts in front of Alex, which
I believe
them
to crash.
It looked like they might have. But as you'd expect, Louie's looking for any angle. So they dart out of the garage, and we cut to the inside of Alex's cab. We're back to the poor man's process, which we haven't seen much.
No, excuse me, sir. Step way the fuck back. No, we don't cut to that. We cut to a B-roll extravaganza. They pass off the B-roll of cabs rolling out of Sunshine Cab here at dusk that we've seen dozens of times. And we're supposed to pretend that that's Alex Reiger. And then they cut to an insert from that previous Angela episode where he's wearing something completely different just to establish that is Reiger in that cab. And then back to the B-roll. I was like, what is happening? Like, this episode just keeps getting better.
We're inside of Alex's cab, and he hears from Bobby over the radio that Louie's tearing it up. He had 8 fares in one cab. And Alex isn't doing so well. I think he says he's had 1 fare and the guy stiffed him. But then Alex excitedly sees a fare and he pulls over. And then 2 nuns, this sounds like the beginning of a joke, 2 nuns get into the cab and they say to him they're going to go to the movies. And unfortunately for Alex, they can't agree on which film to see. One of them wants to see the Muppet movie, and the other one wants to go to see a revival of The Sound of Music.
Which they've seen a dozen times already. They're nuns. Of course, they've seen it. They probably watch it every time it's on television. The Muppet movie is in theaters. Oh, there's no contest here.
It's funny because that dated the episode for me because I saw the Muppet movie in the theater when I was a child. I would have been 5 or 6 years old at the time. So
I saw it at the General Cinemas 2 in Saugus, Massachusetts.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Is that how was that theater around very long? Was that still around when we were in high school?
Up until about I think 1990 might have been its final day, or maybe even a year earlier, but it was turned into a parking lot. It was very depressing.
I believe I saw it at, remember that Peabody Cinema right across from like Shaw's Supermarket, kind of in the middle of where.
Oh yes, next to the North Shore Shopping Center at the time.
Yes,
yeah.
I think I saw it there. It was not a very good movie theater.
What? Excuse me, sir. I have some very good memories of movies in that. I liked that theater. You know what I remember getting in that theater? Remember they used to sell the programs for movies?
Yes. Yes. What did you get?
I don't remember. I remember what I do remember about the movie program was in the back was a full poster, like a reprint of the Jesus Christ Superstar poster. And I remember being weirded out by that as a tiny Catholic. As
you should have been, probably being that young. I don't know why they're arguing because, like you said, they should have gone to the Muppet movie because it's a new movie neither of them had seen before. But one of the nuns says she doesn't like Kermit, which is weird on the face of it. But
this is all good. It's, you know what, it dates the episode, but it's so fucking topical seeing nuns arguing over the Muppet movie versus the goddamn Sound of Music again.
Yeah, it's funny stuff. One of the nuns is played by an actor named Julie Payne, who is another recognizable face that we've seen in things like she was the mime in This is Spinal Tap, one of the mime waiters at the beginning of the movie. She was in Curb Your Enthusiasm. She played Cheryl's mother in that. She's done a lot of voiceover work as well.
She's the one who wanted to see Sound of Music.
She is the one who wanted to see Sound of Music. The other nun is interesting. Her name is, and I'm not making this up, her name is Cress Mirsky, which is a name I'm not familiar with. Her claim to fame is she played Mrs. Wormser in the movie Revenge of the Nerds. I couldn't remember that at all, but that's about her only acting credit. But it stood out to me because I was a big fan of that movie growing up. It did not age well, as it has to be said. The argument between these two nuns it pushes Alex to the point of he kicks them out of the cab. He kicks two nuns out of the cab, but almost immediately he realizes his mistake and gets them back into the cab. And after some more bickering, they pick a movie, and to our relief, they pick the Muppet movie, which was, to your point, the right choice.
Here's my note that I wrote for the scene. Kicking out nuns? Love it.
Judd Hirsch plays it really well because he's so exasperated, and then almost immediately he talks to himself and says, wait a minute, did I just kick out nuns? Oh, come on, get back in here. And then he calls them back in. It's believable that they would get back into the cab after being kicked out because he plays it so well. He plays like he's really remorseful about this. So we fade out and in. It's later in the evening. Bobby reports that Louie's hit $100. And at that same moment, Alex is at $40. So Alex has got to really kick this into high gear. He's losing by an almost 2-1 margin to Louie at this point. Alex, now this is maybe one of my favorite parts of the whole show. Alex pulls over for another fare, which turns out to be, hey, it's screen legend James I Just Do Eyes Hong. This man needs no introduction. He has credits stretching back to 1953. He's been in Perry Mason. He was in The Sand Pebbles, The Rockford Files, of course, Blade Runner, Big Trouble in Little China. This is Mr. David Lopan in the cab.
Shut up, Mr. Burton.
Which, side note, I just watched that the other night again because my son asked to watch Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
What a fucking great movie.
It really is. It only gets better.
It only gets better. There's little things that I see and notice with him and his interactions with Wang. It is awesome. Egg Shen is a delight of a character.
It is my dream to own a toucan bird. They're my favorite animal in the world, and they're playful and fun. And if I achieve that goal, he will be named Mr. David Lopan.
Why a toucan in particular? Like, what's the tie in there?
You ever been around a toucan?
No, never.
They're like dogs with wings. They're really fun. They're playful and silly, and they'll play catch with you. They're just delightful, and they're beautiful. That beak, it's just, I don't know. Toucans have always done it for me. And then to find out that they're the mascot for Guinness Brewery. Wow. Okay, I'll take that one too. Give me all the toucans.
He was in everything everywhere all at once. He's got over 464 credits on IMDb. James Hong is nothing less than a living legend. And here, Hong is playing an Asian businessman who doesn't speak any English, and he's preferring a huge wad of cash on Alex. And Alex realizes that he could basically cheat this man blind and he'd be none the wiser because the guy doesn't know how much it's going to cost to get him to wherever Alex needs to drive him. And Alex even checks in with Elaine for advice over the radio. And she, as we've seen this darker turn of Elaine, she is elated to hear the situation. Like in her mind, it's like, yeah, of course, rob the guy blind. It'll get me away from Louie. Of course you're going to do it. Alex considers the situation a little bit more. And after some, slightly dated language barrier jokes, Alex ultimately does the right thing. He takes only what he is owed for the fare, and he gives the money back. It's $5.
He's going to have like $900.
Yeah, it's a big wad of cash. And he gives the rest back to this businessman. And the businessman finally realizes what's happened, and he expresses some gratitude to Alex. And I have to say, there's a moment where the camera cuts to James Hong's character as he leaves the cab, and he gives this look to Alex as he leaves the cab. And I just thought it was remarkable. It really is this sort of look like, I appreciate what you've done. Like kind of almost nods to Alex as he leaves the cab, and then he's gone. And Alex is left having missed this big opportunity to make all this money.
He doesn't need English. He doesn't need your dialogue to be great. He'll just jump in taxi, say what he wants, and leave. HBO, over on my show, Midnight Viewing, we just reviewed an episode with James Hong. It was Tales from the Dark Side. It was called It All Comes Out in the Wash, and he's the villain of it, and he was great.
He's a villain, really?
Well, he's more of a force of vengeance, let's say.
Huh. What's the episode about, briefly?
It's about, not at all stereotypically, James Hong runs a laundry service, but in this case, horrible people bring their clothing that they committed terrible acts in, and once washed, their sins are washed away, and they no longer feel any guilt about it.
That sounds cool.
And James Hong just keeps putting the screws to his clients, and it's good. Yes, everyone should check it out.
At this point, we finally cut over to Louie in his cab. We haven't seen Louie doing what he does, and he's driving around an older man in a trench coat. And this show loves people in trench coats. This man is an actor named Scott Brady. Are you familiar with Scott Brady?
I am not.
Fasten your seatbelt because you're about to have your mind blown, Father Malone. We have yet another Joe Dante connection. Yes, we do. He played, among other things, the sheriff in Gremlins. Remember the sheriff?
Oh my God, yes, of course. You know what's funny, HP? In my mind, when I remember this episode, the blind man in the back of Louie's cab is Rance Howard.
He's not. He looks like him, but he's not, though.
So when I was rewatching this episode, I was rocked by the fact that it wasn't Rance Howard. Yeah. And even though I had some glimmer of recognition with this guy, I was just like, man, what's wrong with me? Like,
you're not far off, though. The guy does bear, and we'll talk about him shortly. He does look a lot like Rance Howard. But in this case, this guy, Scott Brady, like I said, he was a sheriff in Gremlins. I remember him. You remember him, of course. But here's some interesting facts about Scott Brady. Very, very odd name, by the way. His brother was also an actor. Do you care to guess who his brother was? Without cheating or looking?
I'm not looking up anything. Does he have the same last name?
No.
Oh. Is it Rance Howard?
No, that would be quite a coincidence, but no, it's not Rance Howard. Give you one more guess.
Oh
Just take
no,
a guess.
I have
He's
no
older. I think his brother is older, if that means anything.
idea. E.G. Marshall.
No, but you're close, kind of. His brother is the actor Lawrence Tierney.
Oh my God. Wow.
Because
Yeah, it makes
Joe,
sense. Makes sense now.
yeah. Joe from Reservoir Dogs, of course. I think he was Elaine's father in Seinfeld, Lawrence Tierney.
Absolutely. Scary, scary man. I
Yeah.
met
They
him
don't
once.
look what you met him once? What was that
Yeah.
like?
He was phenomenal. He was everyone was into him because he came to see Reservoir. I was a projectionist at a movie theater in Santa Monica, and we showed Reservoir Dogs. And over the course of the run of the film, one by one, each of the Reservoir Dogs showed up and watched the movie there. But Lawrence Tierney was the first, and he was delightful. He had tons of younger women fawning over him, like what. And we had in the theater, it was kind of an art house cinema. So we had these Jacques Tati, these giant French subway posters up. And there was, I think it's Mr. Hulot's Holiday. And he kept going on and on about what a genius Jacques Tati was. And then he was like, look, I'm going to do his walk. And then he did this Jacques Tati walk across the lobby. So I have fond memories of Lawrence Tierney. I mean, I understand that he was a volatile human being and caused a lot of strife on sets and stuff. But what I got was super nice. And then he signed my Reservoir Dogs poster, and he signed it to the terrible boss of the New Wilshire crime family, which the New Wilshire Theater was the name of the theater.
Wow, that is a great story. There's some indication that he was estranged from his brother, Scott Brady. So it's not surprising to hear you say that maybe he was a little difficult to deal with, but it's my understanding that they were estranged for many, many years until I think towards the end of one of their lives. I think they reconnected. But here's another interesting bit of trivia about this fellow, Scott Brady. He was originally offered the role of Archie Bunker in All in the Family. He turned it down and it went to Carol O'Connor, and the rest is history. Isn't that amazing?
Huh.
Yeah, I couldn't believe this. Ostensibly, this quick little guest star bit in Taxi had such a rich and interesting backstory behind it. I thought it was really, really cool. You know?
Yeah, you know what? That doesn't necessarily mean that he turned down the role of a lifetime, because I believe there was a pilot made for that show that didn't work at all, and they recast a bunch of people. Like Sally Struthers wasn't the original girl in it, and so they very well could have made the pilot with him and gone, no, this guy's too serious. But not to take anything away from him, because he's very, very funny in the short amount of time he's here playing this guy who is smarter than Louie.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is full of delightful moments, as we've already said, but this little scene here with Louie and this fellow in the back of his cab, this was legit one of the funnier pieces in an already fun-packed episode. So
We've seen Louie driving two people. We've seen him drive that kid, and now we've seen him drive this. Both have been gold. Louie needs to get out in the behind the wheel more often.
It's wonderful. So this fellow, this passenger is expressing annoyance to Louie that they've already passed the UN building twice. And he accuses Louie of running up the fare. And then Louie protests. The man introduces himself as Inspector Ryan of the New York Taxi Commission. And he tells Louie to pull it over. He really reads Louie the Riot Act and confiscates his hack license, which we learn is actually Tony Bantus. He's stolen Tony's hack license.
Fantastic.
And then Louie insults the inspector. I think he casts aspersions at his family.
He says your family looks like a bunch of chimps, basically.
Right. And
it's what we always would want to say to an authority figure, and Louie's just letting him have it. It's awesome.
Yeah, Louie doesn't give a fuck. He's just like, well, yeah, whatever, do your worst. And this Inspector Ryan he declares that he can't wait to see Louie hung out to dry. And he tells him to go bring the cab back to the garage, and he gets out of the cab. And then Louie, when he's alone in the cab again, he pulls out another hack license from his reserve, and he says, Bobby Wheeler, reporting for duty. And he puts the hack license down and he drives off. It's a great little sort of capsule bit within this episode. It's really funny.
There are no loose ends. There are no fatty bits on this thing. It just fucking keeps chugging along. It's a machine. It's like a well-tuned cab.
It is. Like I said, there's just something about shows that have this little encapsulated bet or caper or something they're trying to do. And this just ticks all of those boxes for me. I love it. It's so much fun to watch. So we cut to more B-roll as we hear Bobby over the radio announcing the current standings. Alex is at $106.40 and Louie is at $147. So Louie is still ahead. Inside of Alex's cab, Bobby cautions Alex that there's only an hour to go. He's way behind. Alex, at this point, says, no, you know what? This bet's over, but I see a little old lady. I'm going to pick her up. And Bobby says, oh, no, don't pick up an old woman. You'll have to carry her bags. She's only going to want to go a couple blocks. But Alex just says, look, the bet's over. I'm done. I'm just going to finish up my night. So he has a good attitude about the whole thing because he knows he's getting skunked. So he pulls over. He helps this woman carry her groceries into the cab, during which this old woman explains that all these bags of groceries are all for her friends. She says one's in the Bronx, one's in Brooklyn, another one is on Long Island, and the last bag is hers, and she says she lives in New Jersey. Now, why this woman is in Manhattan buying all of these groceries for people in these far-flung corners of the tri-state area is a bit of a mystery to me. I don't know about you.
They all grew up in the same neighborhood in Manhattan, and this was their favorite market, and they all have particular items that you can only get in Manhattan, and now they all live in far-flung areas. She's the only one capable still of going into the city to get these things for her friends.
We'll go with it. It's suspension of disbelief. That's fine.
I think that's implicit in what's going on there, and I think it detracts not at all from this fucking incredible episode.
No, that makes sense.
Although here's the thing, the promise that is being leveled here is this is going to be a fair for the ages. He's taking her not only all over the city, he's taking her across the river and taking her to New Jersey and taking her to this is going to be a big payday.
Yeah, and Alex is so overjoyed at the news that she's got all these different places she has to be driven to. He gives her a big old smooch. And this being a sitcom,
this is great too. She fucking grabs him and pulls him down on top of her. It's this episode. What's going on? Have they been saving all the funny for this one?
That's typical sitcom kind of behavior where the old woman like gets so jazzed up by a kiss that she grabs the guy and gives him a kiss back. But we're happy for Alex now because he's got a fighting chance. He's got to drive this woman all over creation, and it's going to be a big payday. We cut back now. We're back in Louie's cab, and this is another great bit. He's crowing to himself over a bit of luck that he's experiencing. He pulls over and he picks up a blind passenger, the one that the Rance Howard looking guy comes into the cab. And Louie can't believe his luck because this is a guy, he can drive him all over the place and run up the fare, and he believes this guy will never be the wiser because he's blind, of course. And then I think he even says, this is my first time in New York, to which Louie is like, oh, thank you. Like he's so grateful to the cab gods to give him this fare. They finally reach their destination and Louie asks for $22.50, which is it's a pretty big amount.
What is that in modern day money, HP?
I did not look that up. I have my limits.
I would say it's like $75, which means it's actually $125.
It's a lot. But the great thing is this passenger is no fool. And he says that he's counted the clicks on the meter since he got in the cab, and he only owes Louie $6.
The Penguin meets Daredevil.
And he scolds Louie for being a cheat. And Louie tries actually threatening him by pretending he says, well, I'm a big muscular dude and I'll, whatever. And the guy says, well, then you must be talking out of your belly button. Because he knows this guy has heightened senses, his sense of hearing. He knows Louie's this little short guy in the front seat. He gives the $6 to Louie and leaves in a big huff. And then Bobby finally comes over the radio and says, time's up, bring the cabs in. So now we got to figure out who's won this King Cabbie contest.
Who will it be?
For some reason, though, I have to say, they entrust the counting of the money to the dimmest cabbie. They give it to Tony.
More hilarity. It's just they're like, what would be the funniest? Who's this? Who would you never give it to? Banta. Give it to Banta.
Yeah. I'm not sure Banta can count that high without using his fingers and toes, but whatever. Tony counts at the poker table. I think they even have a chalkboard behind them that has like a table broken down of
They
Louie's
do, so
money.
the audience get to participate.
Yeah, and everybody is everybody in the garage is so wrapped with attention. They're all just like the audience. They're so excited. Like, who won? Let's break this down. And the entire garage, like I said, we're all in anticipation, except for Elaine, who has apparently been sitting nearly catatonic for hours because she's afraid that Louis is going to win the bet and she's going to have to go out on a date with him.
Oh man, she's so furious here. She's just staring into space, like trying to not make contact, not to acknowledge any of the lecherous things, which leads me to believe, is this a date? Is this a date we're talking about here?
It does seem like it's a little more than a date
Seems
that
like
he's expecting.
there's going to be some fucking going on.
Yeah, and kudos, by the way, to Mary Lou Henner, because at one point Louis comes over to her and starts making smooth talk to her, like, hey, I can be tender, I can be vulnerable, and she has to be able to look into the middle distance in a catatonic state and then look back at him and make a funny joke. But Louis, Danny DeVito is just so damn funny. I don't know how anyone could resist like the comedy that's being thrown at her. It's great. She does a great job. They all do. So they finally break down the totals, and Louis' total is $212.30, which in today's money would be $849.05. That's a lot of money for 8 hours worth of taxi cab driving.
That is a lot, man. Wow.
Alex's total is sadly $197, which today would be about $787.
Again, nothing to sneeze at, for Christ's sake.
No, they've done incredible work. This is the pinnacle of being a cabbie, making this much money. Louis is so elated. He dances a jig on the bench while Alex apologizes to everybody. And then Tony comes over to Alex to try and console him. But then there's this great moment where he puts his hand on Alex's shoulder and says something like, hey, what are you going to do? Louis is really a good driver. And Alex says, yeah, thank you very much. And by the way, take your hand off of me. Like, he responds.
I think Banta's setup is like, you're taking this really well, like, good for you. And he's like, yeah, get your hand off of me.
Yeah, but he just says it so matter-of-factly as he's starting to count out his tips.
Yeah.
But it was such a snap of him just going right back at Tony and saying, get the hands off of me. I loved it. I was there for it.
Can you hear the yellow lights firing up, HP? Can you hear
them? Oh my God. The future's looking bright. I'm getting ahead of myself. Elaine notices that Alex is counting his tips, and she realizes that the rules only stated that he who brings the most money in wins. Alex has this big wad of tips. So now everybody's excited. Maybe Alex can win this. Louis protests, of course. He says only what's on the meter should count. He said if he thought tips counted, he'd have pulled in more than, and he goes into his pocket, 80 cents. He throws the 80 cents on the thing. Now, Alex's additional $40 brings his total to $237, which would give him the win. But they can't come to a consensus over whether tips count or not. So they ask the only person who didn't bet on the contest, which is who, Father Malone?
It's Latka, who's completely oblivious to the contest, it seems.
Yeah, he's just sitting there eating his chicken. He's not doing anything. And they all kind of crowd around him and start asking him about the contest. And of course, Louis can't help making some very not so implied threats to Latka. But Latka finally agrees, because they go back and forth. Latka agrees that tips count. The whole garage erupts, and except for Louis, they're all happy about it. And Alex wins the contest. And then Louis ends the scene by walking over to his cage and basically saying to everybody, I hope you all die. And that's the end of the episode. No bumper, no nothing. It's a lean and mean machine. We don't need a B plot because the A plot is so strong and the performances are so strong. So that's it for this episode. As is our custom, we're going to talk yellow lights.
What does a yellow light mean?
A reminder, we have a scale of 1 to 5 yellow lights. 1 is the worst taxi episode. 5 is the best taxi episode. As is our custom as well, we're going to throw it to you, Father Malone. What do you give The Great Race?
Well, for the first time in taxi history, this is a 5 yellow light episode. This is unassailable. It is, if someone were to say, what should I watch from Taxi? I would unhesitatingly point to this one and say, watch that. It's an episode where you can, having had no prior knowledge of Taxi, can watch it and enjoy it on every level. And if you've been watching the show, it's even richer because amidst all of the wacky comedy, which is never not good, they give us some depth to these characters. It's really a remarkable piece of television.
I agree with you 100%. I likewise gave this 5 yellow lights. As I've already said, I love movies or TV episodes that involve some kind of contest or caper. For some reason, I'm reminded there was an Odd Couple episode where Felix and Oscar go on Let's Make a Deal dressed as a horse. There's something about that. I don't know. I love that episode, and I love this one too. Not that this is happening in real time, but this is a very self-contained episode of hijinks from one particular evening. Some of these taxi episodes go on for months, the goings on. But
That's
this is
true.
literally, they decide at the start of the shift that they're going to have this bet, and then it goes till the end of the shift, and that's it. The show is over. There's big laughs from Alex and Louie's cabbie misadventures. This is as rewatchable as a taxi episode gets. 5 yellow lights from myself, 5 yellow lights from Father Malone. That will do it for this episode of Night, Mr. Walters. Father Malone, where can people find you when you're not clocked into the garage?
Check out my podcast, Midnight Viewing. It is a twice a week program over at weirdingwaymedia.com. You can also find it on Spotify and Apple and all of those regular places. And check it out. And if you like it, subscribe and give me 5 stars. Thank you.
There you go. And also, I want to mention you have a Patreon. You want to tell people about your Patreon?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The Patreon part of the channel you'll get all of the content early. You'll get it commercial free. And we do bonus content specifically for the channel. Those are fun, some interviews and silly things. So that's patreon.com/Father Malone.
Wonderful. And as for myself, you can find me in many of the same avenues as Father Malone. I'm also proud to be on the Weirding Way Media Network. You can find me on guest shots on the Culture Cast with Chris Dashew. And I've also done some work here and there and helped out on the Dark Destinations podcast, which I'm always evangelizing. Great show, great radio show, radio drama, wonderful production value. Check that out if you haven't already. And I also have a Bandcamp site, hpmusicplace.bandcamp.com. Some new content coming there soon, so check that out. But that will do it for Night, Mr. Walters. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, rate us. We'd love to hear from you in any way you see fit. So for myself and for Father Malone, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again next time.